Shabbat Shalom. So, ancient Israel may well have been the society that came up with an idea that is still not universally accepted, and that is that the ruler is not above the law, but the ruler has to follow the law. All right, and the reason for that is very, very clear in the Torah and in the prophets. The Torah and the prophets do not like the idea of monarchy. They don't like it. Why? Because God is supposed to be Israel's true king, right? But they also know that people are people, right? And that the Torah's purpose is to make us better people, but it's never going to make us perfect people, and that we're going to want a king. So God says, not thrilled, but if you're going to have a king, the king has to follow the same laws as everybody else, and not only that, there are special rules that apply to the king. For example, king can't have too many wives. I didn't write this, okay? King, it just says too many. Lo yarbelo nashim. Lo yarbelo nashim, he shall not multiply wives, okay? He can't have too many wives, can't have too many horses, can't bring the people back to Israel, must personally write out a copy of the Torah and keep it with him at all times and read from it. Assumes the king knows how to read. And then, so in this week's Parsha, not in the section that we read, it's not in the first triennial, but in chapter 4 of Leviticus, all the different situations where a hatat, which means a sin offering, let's say it means a sin offering, okay? It's complicated, but let's say it means a sin offering. All of the different times that a hatat is offered, and throughout the chapter, it's introduced with the word im, which means if, okay? If a person does this, if a person does that, so on and so forth, except verse 22, it says, Asher nasi yechta, when the chief sins. Not if the chief sins, but when the chief sins. The word is nasi, okay? And interestingly enough, in modern Hebrew, the word nasi means president, okay? But it clearly doesn't mean president in the Torah because there was no president. It means, like, nasi literally means the one who is held up, who is raised up, okay? Lahasi, to raise up. So when the chief sins, okay? Now, why does it say all these, if a person does this, if a person does that, if, when the chief sins? Okay, so Rabbi Bachia ben Asher, who lived from 1255 to 1340, he says, it says when the leader sins because the leader will definitely sin. Why?
Absolute power corrupts absolute. They'll have to make decisions. And sometimes those aren't great.
There's a difference between making a mistake and sinning. Okay? So this is what Rabbi Bachia says. He becomes extremely haughty and arrogance which is the cause of sin, is present in him by virtue of the magnitude of his rule. Now remember, this is a guy who lived almost 800 years ago, okay? The leader becomes haughty, haughtiness becomes sin, arrogance is the cause of sin, and that is why the Torah in Deuteronomy warns the king, lest your heart grow haughty over your brothers. Okay? Yeah.
I was going to say, because I said absolute power corrupts absolutely. Or to quote Mel Brooks, it's good to be the king.
It's good to be the king. Not so sure. Not so sure. But right, so Rabbi Bachya ben Asher says, the Torah says when the ruler sins, because the ruler's gonna sin because he becomes arrogant and he holds himself above everybody else, and that is because of the power that he has, and that's what causes him to sin. Okay, so that's 800 years ago. Now talk about now. Rabbi Shai Held, one of the most important thinkers, theologians. I've spoken about a book called Judaism is About Love. That's Rabbi Shai Held. Here's what Rabbi Shai Held writes about this parsha. Power all too often leads to a sense of entitlement, of being above the law, and of not being accountable to the same standards as regular people are. So the Torah warns the leader, your status, no matter how much grandiosity it has fed, does not raise you above the moral law, and it is no guarantee of impunity. Right. Power corrupts, yes, and you have to be careful of it, okay? You are still accountable, right? And if you are not held accountable here, you will be held accountable there, or more likely there. Right? But you will be held accountable because you are not exempt from following God's moral laws. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting, it's not perplexing, that when God is agreeing to allow for, provide for a king, that one of the requirements is that the king shall write his own copy of the Torah and carry it with him and deliver it, using the word he,
Right.
every day. And isn't it interesting, of course, God is omniscient, that he was wise enough to require that, but isn't it ironic and pitiful that obviously that wasn't happening? The writing was a problem, and the counting made it possible, but certainly not holding to it.
Right, but I mean, of course, I mean, look, it says you have to, right? I mean, God chooses not, right? God gave us free will, and the consequence of free will is God sitting up there saying, you people, what the heck is your problem? What's wrong with you? Okay, I gave you the rules that you need to follow to have a good and happy life. And what the heck is wrong with you? Okay, I mean, you know, right, that, God is looking down and saying, what the heck, people? He's not saying the word heck, but we're in shul. You know, yeah, no, but the idea, at least, of having to write it is you can't say, well, I didn't even know that was in there, right? I didn't even, yes, you had reason to know that was in there because you sat and wrote it out by hand.
And the process of writing something out encodes it in your brain.
For sure, right? I mean,
much more so than a keyboard, but yeah.
No, look, to this day, remember the page in our social studies textbook that we had to write by hand in 3rd grade when we were bad? It was page 92, and it was about peanuts. Okay, so you're absolutely right. It encodes it, right? So, all right, now.
I'll begin by saying, who am I to question God? And yet we're taught we should question. So, if God is omniscient and compassionate and gave us free will and saw us with free will, he got rid of Sodom and Gomorrah for the same kinds of reasons.
Right.
Far bigger extreme. Not so sure about it today. But if free will was deteriorating so badly, is it possible for you to think about the fact that someone got decided to take it away? I'm not really expecting you.
No, look, I get what you're saying. I mean, Rabbi Howard Kushner would have said no. That he put it like a ratchet, okay, right? That you can't take it back, right? If you studied economics, right, there's this thing known as the ratchet effect, okay, which, a blip happens and it causes prices to go up. And then the blip goes away, the prices don't come down. Right? It's called the ratchet effect. Okay? And Rabbi Howard Kushner would say that's what God did. Okay? Because otherwise, God is going to be constantly tempted to take away free will. Right? And we're going to be saying, just like God is sitting up there saying, what the heck, people? Right? I mean, if God has the ability to take away free will, then we have the right to say, what the heck, God? Right? I mean, we're what? We're 80 years after the Shoah, right? And God, right? What? So that's Kushner, okay? I haven't figured out but I think I tend to agree with him, right? So, all right, so now you're making me skip some of the good stuff that I had here, but that's okay. Okay, so, right, so here's a continuation of what Rabbi Held says, okay? He talks about, so Rabbi Yochanan, I have to untake out something that I took out. Right, so the word is asher nasi yechta. Okay, asher, when the chieftain sins. Okay, but the word asher sounds like what? Ashrei. Right? Ashrei. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, the generation is blessed that has a leader that recognizes when they sin. Okay? Because we're all human. We're all gonna sin. Right? The question is, when you sin, do you understand the fact that you sinned? Right? Or do you say, in theory, let's say you're theoretically asked in an interview, have you ever asked God for forgiveness in your life? And you say, well, if I ever did anything wrong, I certainly would. But I haven't, right? And the ability to know that you did wrong and what you did wrong is crucial, because you can't a necessary part of not doing the same thing again is knowing, right, not only that you did wrong, but what you did wrong, why it was wrong, and why you did it, right? I mean, I know, because I had to go through exactly that process to have my suspension from the RA, taken away. I had not just I did wrong, what I did wrong, why it was wrong, why I did it, what I need to know to make sure that I won't do it again. And if you don't go through all of those steps, but the first step is to know that you did wrong, is to know that you did wrong. So Yochanan ben Zakkai says that's why it uses a word asher, because there are other words for when, because the generation is blessed, ashrei, that has a leader that at least recognizes that he sinned. Okay? And so Rabbi Held takes Rabbi Yochanan's commentary, says, since leaders are like us, only flesh and blood, they are bound to be less than perfect. In light of this, the question we face as a community is what kind of imperfect leaders we want. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's lesson is that we should seek flawed leaders who are genuinely capable without dissembling or descending into doublespeak of taking responsibility for their failings. Such leaders are, as we know, all too well, tragically rare. Okay? I mean, there's oceans of ink commentary on precisely this point, right? So, Shadal, Rabbi Shmuel David Luzzatto, who lived in the 1800s in Italy. Okay, you probably didn't know that we had a great Torah scholars from Italy, but we did. And here's what Shadal says. The nation bears the guilt of its leaders and is punished because of them. A leader's corruption causes many disasters for his people. The ancients believed that the nation was punished directly for the sin of the leader. Okay, and here's Professor Alan Cooper of JTS. He's a professor emeritus of Bible. He served as provost of JTS for a while, and is probably the only rabbinical school professor to have also played at Woodstock. He was a charter member of Shana Na, and he's, am I going to rock and roll or grad school in Bible? And he decided grad school in Bible, because Shana Na was started at Columbia. And anyway, so here's what Professor Cooper says. Just as the corrupt leaders who lead the people astray are culpable, so are the people who follow those leaders or act corruptly on their own. There are no temple sacrifices to provide rectification anymore, but individuals and communities remain liable for the wrongs not only that they commit, but that they permit. Right? You know something is wrong and you don't stop it or at least even attempt to stop it, right? Then you, right, Rabbi Heschel, in our prayer book, some are guilty, all are responsible. Mommy, daddy, Zadie, Bubby, what did you do when? Nothing. I was too busy watching TV. Nothing. I was afraid. Nothing. I had a well-paying job that I was afraid to lose. Okay? If that's your answer, you're guilty too. Right? Individuals and communities remain liable for the wrongs that they permit and that they commit. And as the Torah teaches, they must exercise their obligation to write them. If we see, right, if you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.